policy through committee work. Even I managed to get, when I was the only person Green in Parliament, I managed to get amendments to legislation through with the help of outside organisations. That, in fact, is how accessible the Scottish Parliament is. It's very good in that respect. A unicameral Parliament that allows outside organisations to work with individual MSPs to provide really good, sound amendments to legislation that's passing through the Parliament. It works very, very well indeed. In the second Parliament, I frankly don't know, well, we must have a list in some level, which was very good as how many amendments we got through in committee, but everybody, if you like, was at it. This year, I'm on Petitions Committee, which is not a legislative committee, but through that committee, I've spoken up on a few issues, and these issues are going forward. What the Petitions Committee does is recommend for pieces of legislation, for the concerns to be passed to the different committees in Parliament, or direct to the government, or sometimes to some other external organisation, in order for it to be taken further forward. And then we keep tracking what's happening, sometimes over a period of 2 or 3 or 4 years. What has happened to the petition, if we decide to keep the petition alive during its course. So, I'll stop there because I love answering questions. That was 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Cheers. So you've got at least 45 minutes to crack on with as many questions as you like.
I was actually wondering, just in terms of talking about Green Party politics and connections with other Green parties in other countries, I'm wondering particularly in Germany, there's the Green Party that's become a major force in the Bundestag, and it's formed a kind of crystallized into a sort of alliance with the SDP and the German Socialists, which, obviously in recent years it's become a little bit more detached, but there's still a fairly solid bloc. I'm wondering why perhaps that hasn't happened in this country, both in Scotland and the UK. The Green Party hasn't taken a larger share of the overall parliament, and that it hasn't sort of shifted into alliance with Labour.
Well, part of the reason is that we don't have enough people elected. I mean, we don't have a single MP down south. We're hoping to get our first 2 elected. And the bloc there, as everybody here will understand, is the first past the post system in England and Wales. In Ireland, where they've been a bit ahead of us in their electoral system, they went to proportional representation sometime before Scotland did. And there you have one parliament, we're only a parliament behind the Irish Greens, if you like. And they got elected with increased numbers in the last parliament, and they are now in alliance. They have formed they are in government. And in fact, they've got a very good bargain, because think of the 10 of them who've been elected, 3 of them have got ministers' posts. That's pretty good, 30% of a small party getting ministers' posts in the borough. There are only 2 of us in the Scottish Parliament, and yet, because of our position in being crucial to certain votes, where the SNP manages to get Conservatives usually on their side, we find ourselves in this very odd position of voting for or against an SNP Conservative alliance. We do as much as we can in that area. But if your question is in any way sort of geared towards what kind of parties will we associate with, well, it's quite clear that we are associating with Conservatives in the SNP, who are a fairly conservative, small seat party in many ways. We should have found it really reasonably easy also to have worked with Labour and Liberal, because we've got many points in common with them. But Labour are so out of favour with the electorate at the moment that even the Liberals wouldn't combine with them for a 3rd time after the last election. With our help, they could have formed an alliance, and the SNP wouldn't be in power, but they didn't dare do it. I spoke to the Liberals, they didn't want to know. They didn't want to know about going within the SNP either, because they felt they'd taken enough stick for being in alliance with Labour for 8 years. So these things can sometimes come home to roost in rather negative ways.
If I might actually
Yes,
follow up,
yes.
because obviously I think part of the question was that at least in Germany, I know the Greens and the SDP feel that ideologically have quite a lot in common. I guess more fundamentally, does the Green Party in Scotland not feel like ideologically has something in common with the socialists?
Well,
I mean, it's a purely question
we have a lot in common with what I would describe as European socialism. We don't have a lot in common with the, I have to say, rather strident and disorganised socialism that we see in Scotland, where you had 7 different parties that allied together for 4 years in the Parliament and fell apart after 2 years. Whereas we went into the Parliament determined to show that we were properly organised, wanted to be a sound political force where people knew what we stood for, knew that we would try to deliver what was written on the tin, and would engage in parliamentary politics. But we weren't there to disrupt parliamentary politics, we were there to take part in it and do the best we can for Scotland. And that really is a fairly fundamental difference. There are many members of the Green Party in Scotland who are basically, in much of their thinking, socialists. As there are members of the SNP who are socialists. Even some members of the Labour Party are basically socialists. That might come as a surprise to you, but I know some of them. It's just that where we want to engage is where we can influence events in terms of actual outcomes rather than in developing policies in the ether, if you like.
Why is it that the Green Party is more aligned with the left and socialist movements of Europe? Shouldn't the Greens take a position where they ideologically, not left or right, simply support whichever the most effective policies being market-based, if they were the most effective to tackle environmental issues?
I think if you look across the piece in Europe, you'll find that is where the Green movement has been over the last 20 years. It's just that in Germany, the Greens are much more powerful than any other. They're the most powerful Green Party in Europe in terms of their establishment, if you like, as a major force in German politics. Not an occasional force that can be sort of occasionally sidelined. They're as major a force as the Labour. They're more major a force in German politics, for instance, than the Liberal Party is here. And I've just quoted, we're in occasionally in alliance with the SNP and the Conservatives on votes, but more often we have teamed up with Labour and Liberal to defeat things that we don't want. But we're pragmatic, if you like, in our approach to voting on policies within the Scottish Parliament. So does that answer your question? You're looking...
No, I'll make a follow.
Yeah, well, please do. No, I mean, I'm doing my best to explain things as best as I can. Don't forget, all parties are mixtures of people. I would say that the Scottish Green Party is... My view was neither left nor right, but straightforward Green policies. And I've just written an article for our own party paper. I haven't done that in years because the funny thing is, being a leader and not a leader